The cold arrived earlier than usual that year. The wind slipped through the cracks of the small apartment. Even though the windows were shut tight, she noticed it every morning when she woke up before sunrise, pulling the thin blanket closer around her and her child. The alarm rang softly at 5, and she reached out to stop it before it could wake him. He slept beside her on the mattress they shared, his face calm, unaware how heavy life felt on her chest. She moved quietly, stepping around toys placed neatly against the wall. There was no separate bedroom, just one room, a tiny kitchen corner, and a bathroom with a leaking tap she had learned to ignore. She washed her face with cold water and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, older than her years. Dark circles sat under her eyes, and her hair was tied back in the same loose knot she wore every day. She sighed, not out of sadness, but from habit. Her mornings followed the same pattern. She packed a simple lunch, checked her child's school bag, and left a small note beside his pillow reminding him that she loved him. She did this even though she told him the same words every night. Outside, the sky was still dark as she walked to the bus stop. The streets were quiet, and the cold made her hands ache. She rubbed them together, thinking about the list in her head: rent, school fees, groceries, electricity. Christmas sat at the bottom of that list, circled but untouched. At work, she kept moving, cleaning, lifting, wiping, serving, whatever's needed. She didn't complain. Complaining never paid bills. Her co-workers talked about holiday plans, gifts, family dinners, and trips back home. She smiled when they spoke to her and nodded at the right moments. Inside, she felt like an outsider listening to stories she was no longer part of. When someone asked her what she was doing for Christmas, she answered lightly, saying she would spend it quietly with her child. That part was true. Everything else she left unsaid. By the time she returned home each evening, her body felt heavy. Her child would run to the door, hugging her legs, talking excitedly about school, drawings, and friends. Those moments made everything else fade for a while. She cooked simple meals, rice, soup, bread, and they ate together on the floor. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence. She never let him see her worry. She believed children should not carry adult fears. As December moved closer, the world around them began to change. Lights appeared on balconies. Shops played cheerful music. Families walked together, carrying bags filled with gifts. Her child pressed his face against shop windows, eyes wide with wonder. He pointed at toys, asking innocent questions. She answered gently, changing the subject when she could. At night, after he fell asleep, she sat alone, staring at the wall, listening to the city breathe. That was when the worry returned. It wasn't just money that weighed on her. It was the looks, the questions, the unspoken judgment. Every year, someone reminded her that she was alone. A relative would say a child needs a father. A neighbor would ask if she had met anyone yet. Even strangers seemed to notice. She had grown used to smiling through it. But Christmas made it harder. Christmas was about families, couples, togetherness. It highlighted everything she did not have. One evening, she received a call from a family member inviting her to a Christmas dinner. The invitation sounded kind, but she knew what waited there. Curious glances, careful questions, and quiet pity. She wanted her child to enjoy the holiday without feeling different or less. She wanted, just once, to walk into a room without explaining her life. That night, after putting her child to bed, she sat with her old phone in her hands. The screen was cracked, and the battery drained quickly, but it still worked. She opened social media, scrolling without purpose. People shared photos of decorated trees, smiling couples, matching outfits. She almost closed the app when a simple thought crossed her mind. It was small at first, almost silly. She laughed softly to herself, shaking her head. But the thought returned, stronger this time. She wasn't looking for love. She wasn't dreaming of romance. She just wanted peace. She wanted a normal Christmas dinner, without whispers. She wanted her child to see her confident and strong, not always defending herself. The idea felt risky, but also strangely practical. She searched for local groups, community pages, places where people offered small services or odd jobs. Her fingers hovered over the screen as doubt crept in. What if people laughed? What if someone misunderstood? She thought about closing the phone and going to sleep. Then she remembered her child's face in front of the toy shop window. She remembered the phone call invitation. She remembered every tired morning and every quiet night. She typed slowly, choosing her words carefully. She kept it simple and honest. No drama. No lies beyond what was necessary. She read it twice, then a third time. Her heart beat faster than it had in a long time. With one last breath, she pressed post. The room fell silent again. She placed the phone face down beside her and lay back, staring at the ceiling. She felt nervous, embarrassed, and unsure all at once. Yet beneath it all, there was a small spark of hope. Not for love, not for money, but for a moment of relief. Just one Christmas where she could breathe. Outside, the city lights flickered. Somewhere far away, people laughed, cars passed, and music played. Inside the small apartment, a single mother waited, unaware that a simple decision made on a quiet night was about to change more than just her Christmas. She barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind returned to the post she had made. By morning, she almost forgot about it as life took over again. She woke early, prepared breakfast, and walked her child to school. The cold air felt sharper than usual, and she kept her hands in her pockets, telling herself she had done nothing wrong. It was just an idea, nothing more. At work, her phone stayed silent for hours. She cleaned floors, wiped tables, and moved from one task to the next, pushing the thought away. Around midday, during a short break, she checked her phone out of habit. A single notification waited for her. Her stomach tightened as she opened it. The message was short and polite. The man said he had seen her post and understood what she was asking. He didn't ask personal questions or make jokes. He simply said he could help and that the amount she offered was fine. She read the message twice, surprised by how normal it sounded. No strange words, no pressure, just calm sentences. She hesitated before replying. Part of her wanted to ignore it and pretend none of this had happened, but another part reminded her why she had posted in the first place. She replied carefully, setting clear limits. One dinner, public place. No acting beyond holding a conversation. He agreed without hesitation. They decided to meet a few days later at a small cafe near her neighborhood. It was a place she knew well, simple and quiet. On the day of the meeting, she felt nervous in a way she hadn't felt in years. She changed her clothes twice, finally choosing something clean and modest. She didn't want to impress anyone. She just wanted to feel comfortable. She arrived early and sat by the window, hands wrapped around a warm cup. When the door opened and he walked in, she recognized him immediately from the photo he had sent. He looked ordinary, well-dressed, but not flashy. Calm eyes, no signs of wealth or struggle, just someone who blended into the crowd. He greeted her politely and thanked her for meeting him. His voice was steady and his manners were gentle. As they talked, she noticed he listened more than he spoke. He didn't pry into her past or ask about the post in detail. When she explained what she needed, he nodded, saying he understood. She told him about the dinner, her family, and her wish to avoid uncomfortable questions. She did not mention money struggles or loneliness. She kept the story simple. He didn't judge her or smile in a way that made her feel small. He just accepted it. When she offered to pay for the coffee, he waved it off casually and paid without comment. She noticed but didn't think much of it. People sometimes did small, kind things. It didn't mean anything. Before leaving, she took out the money she had saved carefully from her wallet. He stopped her and said it wasn't necessary yet. He would take it after the dinner. She appreciated that more than she expected. It made the situation feel less awkward, less like a transaction. Over the next few days, they exchanged a few messages to plan details. Nothing personal. Just timing, clothing, and simple background stories to keep things smooth. He never crossed boundaries, never asked for more, never tried to turn it into something else. The day before Christmas, they met again briefly to walk through how things would go. He asked thoughtful questions, like how long they would stay and how her child might react. That surprised her. Most people only cared about themselves. He seemed genuinely interested in making things easier for her. That evening, as she walked home, she realized she felt lighter. Not happy exactly, but less tense. For the first time in weeks, Christmas didn't feel like a weight pressing down on her chest. On Christmas morning, she woke before her child, listening to his soft breathing. She prepared a simple breakfast and watched his eyes light up at the small gift she had managed to save for her. His joy made her forget everything else, even if only for a moment. When it was time to leave for the dinner, she dressed carefully and helped her child get ready. A knock came at the door, gentle and steady. Her heart skipped. She opened it to find him standing there, dressed neatly, holding a small bag with simple chocolates for the hosts. He greeted her child warmly, crouching to his level and speaking kindly. The child smiled back easily, which surprised her. Children were honest. They sensed things adults often missed. As they walked together toward the bus stop, she noticed people glance at them differently, not with curiosity, but with normal interest, as if they were just another small family heading out for the holiday. That feeling alone made everything worth it. During the ride, they spoke quietly about everyday things. Weather, traffic, food. He never acted like he was playing a role. It felt natural, which made her both relieved and confused. She reminded herself this was temporary, just one day. When they arrived at the house, the familiar tension returned, but it was softer now. He placed a reassuring hand lightly on her arm, not dramatic, just enough to steady her. She took a breath and stepped inside. The dinner went better than she expected. Conversations flowed. Questions were asked, but they were gentle now, less sharp. She didn't feel like she was defending herself. He spoke calmly, respectfully, never trying to take control of the room. At one point, she caught herself laughing without forcing it. The sound surprised her. It had been a long time since laughter came so easily. When the evening ended and they stepped back into the cold night air, she felt exhausted but peaceful. On the walk home, she thanked him sincerely. She reached for her wallet, and this time he accepted the money without comment. As he walked away, she watched his figure disappear down the street. She told herself the chapter was closed. It had been a simple agreement, nothing more. Yet as she closed her door and tucked her child into bed that night, she couldn't ignore the strange feeling in her chest. Something about the day had stayed with her. Not hope, not expectation, just the quiet sense that life had shifted slightly, in a way she didn't yet understand. In the days after the Christmas dinner, she found herself thinking about him more than she expected. It wasn't a romantic feeling, not yet, just curiosity mixed with confusion. How could someone so ordinary in appearance carry himself with such calm and confidence? How could he be so patient with her child, so respectful, so attentive, without asking anything in return? She tried to dismiss these thoughts, reminding herself that it had been just one evening, a simple arrangement, and nothing more. The man contacted her again, this time to ask if she wanted to rehearse for the next family gathering. He spoke gently, politely, never demanding, never overstepping. She agreed, partly because she didn't want to manage the event alone, and partly because she wanted to see how he handled situations she normally dreaded. They met at a small cafe, one she hadn't been to in years. The familiarity comforted her, but the nervous excitement stayed. She watched him as he entered, carrying himself with the same quiet dignity that had struck her before. He greeted her child with a warm smile, and her child smiled back immediately. She felt a small pang in her chest. Her child's trust came easily, and surprised her how quickly he'd accepted this man into their little world. She realized that children noticed honesty more than appearances, more than money or status. This man, whatever he was, had passed that invisible test. During their conversation, she noticed little things that didn't fit the image she had of someone ordinary. He spoke knowledgeably about books, current events, even some small business trends. Not as a teacher or lecturer, just casually, but with an ease that made her stop and think. She realized she had underestimated him. It wasn't arrogance. It was awareness, quiet awareness that came from life experience. She couldn't place it. He didn't flaunt anything. He didn't show off. He simply existed, calm and measured. Over the next few days, they spent more time together preparing for the gathering. He helped with small tasks, arranging flowers, setting the table, folding napkins. He never insisted, never took control, but offered support where he could. She began to notice that he remembered small details she mentioned in passing. Her favorite flowers, the story her child told her about school, a comment she had made about the meal. He never mentioned these things in a way that seemed intrusive. It was quiet, subtle, thoughtful. She started wondering who he really was, but she quickly dismissed it. She didn't want to think too much, just let things be. One afternoon, while they were rehearsing the conversation and roles for the gathering, her child ran into the room holding a drawing. He wanted both of them to see it. She noticed the man's genuine interest, the way he crouched to the child's level, asking questions and praising effort without exaggeration. He didn't overdo it, didn't try to impress. His reactions were natural, sincere. She realized in that moment that he had a rare kind of patience and kindness. Not many people had that. She felt a mix of relief and unease. Relief that her child was safe with him. Unease because she didn't understand why he acted like this. Later, as they sat in silence drinking tea, she found herself talking about small personal things. Her worries about money, her hopes for her child, her fear of being judged. She didn't intend to share so much, but his presence was calm and grounding. He listened, really listened, without offering unsolicited advice or judgment. She felt seen in a way she hadn't in years. A part of her wanted to stop, to close up, but another part wanted to continue, just to feel heard. She started noticing more about him, small details she had ignored before. The way he straightened his coat with quiet precision, the way he avoided taking the largest piece of food on the table, the way he smiled when her child made a small joke. Nothing flashy, nothing attention-seeking, just simple, considerate actions that spoke volumes. One evening, she caught him looking at her differently, not with expectation or curiosity, but with a quiet admiration. He didn't say anything, and she didn't ask. She felt her heart skip, a strange flutter she couldn't explain. She reminded herself, this was a fake arrangement, temporary, nothing more. Yet the feeling lingered. The next few days passed in a blur of preparations, rehearsals, and small conversations. She started to see him in her routine, in the background, always helpful, never intrusive. The more she observed, the more she realized that he was not who he appeared to be at first glance. There was a depth, a richness of character that money or status could not define. She began to feel curious, cautious, and a little unsettled. Her mind often drifted to question, who was he really? She had assumed he was like any other man trying to earn a few dollars. She had never expected someone so aware, so thoughtful, so kind. The realization both comforted and worried her. Comforted because she trusted him. Worried because she didn't want her child or herself to be caught in a situation they could not control. One afternoon, as they were finishing preparations, she asked a simple question about his work. He answered briefly but carefully, not giving away much. She noticed a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, something almost imperceptible. She didn't press further. She had learned over time that some questions did not need answers, at least not yet. Still, the thought stayed with her, quietly, making her more aware of the man beside her. As Christmas approached, the quiet tension built. She felt lighter in some ways, more confident, and yet anxious in others. She had started to rely on his presence without admitting it. His calm demeanor, his patience, his attention to detail. These things had become a small anchor in her stormy world. And yet, the mystery of who he really was lingered. She could sense there was more, something hidden beneath the ordinary exterior, but she had no idea what it might be. One evening, after her child had fallen asleep, she sat by the window, thinking. The lights outside twinkled, the sound of the city quiet and distant. She realized she hadn't felt this mixture of comfort and unease in years. The man had entered her life with a simple, practical offer, a fake presents for Christmas, but had become something more without either of them realizing it. The boundary between arrangement and reality had begun to blur, quietly, imperceptibly. She understood that the Christmas she had dreaded, full of judgment and tension, might be different now. She wasn't sure if she should be relieved or afraid. She had no idea that in the days ahead, the man's true identity would be revealed, shaking the foundation of the trust and curiosity that had quietly grown between them. For now, All she could do was continue, day by day, moment by moment, learning more about him and herself than she ever expected. The morning of the family gathering arrived with crisp air and a sky painted in pale winter colors. She woke early, preparing herself and her child. Everything seemed normal on the surface, yet she felt an undercurrent of anticipation that made her stomach twist. She reminded herself to stay calm, to treat the day like any other. Still, her thoughts kept drifting to him, to the quiet ways he'd become a part of her life in just a few days. When he arrived to accompany them, he carried himself as usual, steady, composed, polite. Her child ran to greet him, and his calm smile made her child feel immediately at ease. She noticed once more how naturally he blended into their small family bubble, how unpretentious he was. She had started to trust him fully, almost without realizing it. The walk to the gathering was filled with light conversation. He asked about small details she mentioned in passing earlier in the week and remembered them effortlessly. She found herself smiling without thinking, appreciating how easy it felt to have him there. Yet, deep down, she carried a quiet suspicion that he was not entirely what he seemed. Something about the confidence, the knowledge, the patience. She couldn't place it, but it made her uneasy. Upon entering the house, familiar voices greeted them. Family members moved about, arranging decorations, preparing food, laughing at shared memories. She introduced him as her friend, someone she had met recently, and asked to accompany them for the holiday. His manner was impeccable. He bowed slightly, shook hands, and greeted everyone warmly. No one questioned him at first. He seemed perfectly ordinary, and she felt relieved. The day progressed smoothly. Conversations flowed. Her child was happy. Laughter echoed through the house, and she felt a rare sense of normalcy. Yet, small moments began to shift the atmosphere. One guest, a distant relative she barely saw, paused and looked at him with recognition. Their eyes widened slightly, a subtle hint of surprise that she almost missed. She noticed the pause but didn't think much of it. Perhaps the guest had seen him somewhere before. She tried to focus on her child, on the laughter and joy around her. Still, the moment lingered, a shadow she couldn't ignore. Later, during a break in the gathering, someone casually asked him about his work. He answered politely, carefully, but in the answer, he mentioned details that didn't quite fit the image of someone ordinary. The questions became more pointed. Guests leaned in, curiosity growing. Then a phone rang, a family friend outside the room, and the conversation shifted momentarily. The man stepped aside to take the call, and when he returned, there was a slight change in posture, a quiet tension in his face. It happened in a moment of carelessness. Someone mentioned a charity he had supported, a name she had never heard. Their words clicked together, a connection that she couldn't see at first, but the man's reaction made obvious. A subtle glance, a stiffening of his posture. Then, finally, someone else, recognizing him from news articles, casually said, "Wait a minute, aren't you the one who funded that project?" The words hung in the air. Silence followed. Her stomach sank. She felt a mix of confusion, shock, and fear. All the little moments she had trusted, all the quiet admiration and patience, now seemed different. She wasn't sure how to process it. Was he pretending all along? Had she been used? The questions ran through her mind faster than she could catch them. He noticed her reaction immediately. Calmly, he moved closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. He explained. He had lived a quiet life by choice, keeping away from public attention. The $50 agreement had been genuine from his side. Not for money, not for any hidden reason, but because he wanted to experience a simple Christmas away from his usual life. He had never imagined he would meet someone like her or a child, and the connection they had built was real, he insisted. She listened, heart racing, unsure whether to believe him. His words were honest, his tone sincere. Yet her mind struggled with the idea that she had been unknowingly in the presence of wealth, of privilege, of something she had only dreamed of. The disparity between the man she thought she knew and the man standing before her was dizzying. Her child, oblivious of the tension, ran up with a drawing. He handed it to her first, then to him. The man crouched down, accepting it with genuine excitement and praise. She watched and realized something. No matter who he was, his actions with her child had been real. That kindness, that patience, that attentiveness. Those were not acts. As the evening wore on, more family members began to understand who he was. Conversations shifted. Questions were asked, polite but curious. She saw the respect he commanded without any arrogance. He answered with humility, never boasting, never diminishing anyone else. Gradually, her panic eased, replaced with quiet realization. The man had never treated her as less, never judged her circumstances, never made her feel small. That truth mattered more than the revelation of wealth. When the gathering ended and they stepped outside into the night air, she felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. She had faced judgment, surprise, curiosity, and uncertainty all in a single day. Yet, despite everything, she also felt a sense of clarity. The man had shown her that the measure of a person was not in money, nor in appearances, but in actions, in patience, in kindness. On the walk home, she kept glancing at him, trying to reconcile the two versions of reality she had held. She realized that for her child and herself, the experience had been genuine, meaningful, and comforting. The truth about his identity changed things, yes, but it did not erase the bond that had quietly formed. When they reached their small apartment, she thanked him quietly. He smiled, nodded, and waved off the thanks, saying simply that the day had been meaningful for him as well. As he turned to leave, she felt a mixture of gratitude, relief, and wonder. The man she had hired for $50 had brought far more than she had expected. Trust, care, respect, and a glimpse of something she had longed for. That night, as she tucked her child into bed, she reflected on the day. She realized that life often held surprises in ways people could not predict. Sometimes what seemed like a small, simple choice could bring unexpected lessons and connections. The Christmas that had started with uncertainty and fear had ended with understanding, gratitude, and quiet joy. She knew the coming days would bring questions, perhaps curiosity from neighbors, perhaps stories from relatives. But she also knew one thing for certain. The man had never treated her unfairly. Whatever his wealth or status, the truth of his character had been clear in every action, every gentle word, every patient smile. That was the gift she would carry forward, far more valuable than any material thing. The days after the family gathering passed quietly, but her mind was restless. The truth about him lingered in her thoughts, like a gentle hum she could not ignore. She went about her routine, waking early, preparing breakfast, walking her child to school, working long hours. But something had shifted. The ordinary rhythm of life felt heavier and lighter at the same time. He had revealed his true identity, yet the feelings and trust she had built could not be erased. The questions of what to think and what to feel crowded her mind. She replayed every small moment in her head. How he had crouched to listen to her child. How he had remembered tiny details she mentioned in passing. How he had handled a family gathering with such humility and care. It was clear that his words were true. He had wanted to experience a simple Christmas, but what had unfolded went far beyond that. The connection was real, unplanned, genuine, and now she had to decide how to respond to this new reality. The man reached out again, asking if they could meet for coffee. She hesitated. Her pride told her to keep her distance, to avoid getting caught up in complexities of someone else's world. Yet another part of her, the part that had grown to trust him and appreciate his kindness, wanted to understand, to see him again, to hear him without distractions. She agreed, cautiously. When they met, the air between them was quiet, but filled with unspoken words. She noticed the same calm presence, the same steady, gentle demeanor. He did not bring up his wealth or fame. Instead, he spoke about small things, how the city was changing, how he enjoyed the quiet mornings, how he had been touched by her child's laughter. She listened, feeling a mixture of curiosity, relief, and nervousness. She asked questions about his choice to live quietly, to stay away from attention. He answered simply, without boasting or embellishment. He spoke about freedom, about the peace that came from living humbly, and about the joy he found in the unexpected connection with her and her child. She began to understand that wealth and status had never defined him. Actions, choices, and respect had. Over the next few weeks, they spent more time together, not as a couple, not as an arrangement, but as two people sharing moments, simple and unhurried. They walked in quiet parks, shared small meals, and sometimes simply sat in silence. Her child ran ahead in the playground, laughter ringing in the air, while she watched the man interact naturally, patiently, kindly. Each time, she felt a warmth and security she had not known in years. Yet the knowledge of his wealth lingered. It was not the money itself, but the realization that she had been unaware. It stirred a quiet fear, a thought that perhaps she had judged him. Perhaps the trust she placed was fragile. She talked to him about it once, hesitantly, asking how she should feel, what she should think. He listened without judgment, explaining that trust was built through actions, not assumptions. He reminded her that the connection they shared was real, formed through kindness, patience, and understanding, not money or appearances. One evening, as they walked home after an ordinary dinner, snow falling softly around them, she felt an unexpected peace. The streets were quiet, the city lights reflected in puddles, and the air smelled of winter. Her child ran ahead, calling for them to catch up, and she watched the man laugh gently, a sound so natural it warmed her heart. She realized then that the important part of life was not appearances or money or status, but the way people treated each other. The decision she faced was simple yet profound. She could choose to be distant, to retreat into the life she knew, avoiding the complexity of someone different yet genuine. Or she could embrace the truth, the realness, the connection that had grown in unexpected ways. The choice was hers, and it felt heavier than any other she had made. Days later, she invited him to their small apartment for a quiet evening. They cooked together, laughed at small mistakes, and shared stories. Her child sat nearby, drawing pictures and sharing snippets of the day. The atmosphere was light, warm, safe. She watched him interact with her child, with her and with herself. She felt a quiet gratitude and understanding. The $50 arrangement had blossomed into something far richer, far more meaningful. After her child went to bed, she turned to him. She spoke simply, clearly, without hesitation. She told him that she valued the way he had respected them, that she trusted him, that she appreciated his honesty and care. She admitted her initial fear, her surprise, and her uncertainty. He listened, nodding quietly, patiently, without rushing or reacting. His presence alone reassured her. He spoke next, softly, calmly, explaining that he did not expect anything from her but friendship, understanding, and acceptance. He had chosen to step into her life simply because he wanted to experience the warmth, the authenticity, the quiet joys of a life he could not always access despite his wealth. His words were sincere, gentle, and humble. She realized that his intentions had been true from the start. In that moment, she made her choice. She chose to accept him for who he was, not for his wealth, not for his status, but for his actions, his patience, and the way he treated her and her child. She chose to embrace the connection, to allow trust and kindness to guide their relationship. It was a conscious, deliberate decision, free from pressure or expectation, rooted in truth. The following days were quieter, yet filled with new understanding. She watched him with her child. She observed the small gestures of care, the quiet laughter, the attention to detail she had never noticed before. She understood then that relationships were built slowly, through actions and respect, not declarations or appearances. She felt a renewed sense of hope, of confidence, of trust. Christmas faded into the new year, but the lessons and the connection endured. She realized that sometimes life offered unexpected gifts, not wrapped in paper or ribbons, but in the form of genuine kindness and human understanding. She understood that trust, patience, and small gestures mattered far more than anything else. The man who had entered her life for $50 had brought more than company. He had brought insight, peace, and the realization that choices grounded in honesty could transform hearts. As winter moved on, she continued her daily routines, now lighter, more aware, and more confident. Her child remained the center of her world. But the quiet bond she shared with him, the man who had once been a stranger, added warmth to her days. She watched him interact, laugh, and care without pretense. The realization settled in her mind. The Christmas she had feared, full of judgment and discomfort, had become the catalyst for a profound understanding of connection, trust, and human kindness. In the end, she understood that life was unpredictable. Small choices, even something as simple as hiring someone for $50, could lead to profound, unexpected change. She had faced uncertainty, surprise, and fear, but she had also discovered trust, respect, and warmth. Her decision to embrace the truth, to see the man for who he truly was, became a turning point, not just for her, but for her child as well. The quiet moments, the gentle smiles, the patient laughter, all of it had shaped a new understanding of what it meant to connect, to trust, and choose love and respect over fear and assumption.